terribly neglected, where you've got students having to worry every day if they get to school and back home without being injured, because there are gangs in the neighborhood, because there's just, there are groups that will prey on them, that there is joblessness in that community, where there's a lack of, places to go after school. That sustainable economic and social development, if you don't have that, what you have is a community where scapegoating is completely natural because people are miserable and they're looking at who to blame. And so that is something that is critical to really getting to a place where we're going to have harmonious society. We have to take away those factors that are driving the divisions among many communities. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, you can hit this one pretty fast. This is a lot of the stuff I already shared with you about LA County. And I talked about this as well. Next slide. All right, I don't think I actually mentioned this, but you'll see that out of the $22 billion, 20% goes to health services, 27% for public protection, and 25% for social services. And one thing I will say is that we have been on a track for many years where not just LA County government, but our state government, our nation, has been spending a vast amount of money in incarceration. California, definitely has built way more prisons than they have universities. And that has been the track we have been on because we have expected law enforcement to solve the problem, where they go into communities where there's youth gangs, where the only organized youth activity is the gang. They come in, they arrest everyone they can get their hands on, they send them to the jails and prisons, and guess what happens? Within months, you've got new recruits coming in because the reason why gangs are successful and reproduce was not addressed, and that is there are no alternatives for young people in those communities, or limited. And so the investment in social services and investment in young people has been far inferior to what has been required. And so the strategy we've had for gangs, for example, in the past 20, 30 years, has been a complete failure. And it's not me saying this. This is Chief Bratton and Sheriff Baca. They're saying that we cannot arrest our way out of this situation. We have to invest in youth. We have to invest in gang prevention and intervention. Because the police will tell you 90% of the gang members are not the ones causing the problem. It's the 10% that cause 90% of the gang crime. The other 90% could be there for a variety of reasons. Protection, self-preservation, like to hang out with the guys with the juice. There's a whole variety of reasons. But unless you give reasons to peel those guys away and opportunities, then you're going to continually have gangs in our communities. And so it's a sad thing that we have not, in all this time, been able to really eliminate gang violence in any neighborhood in any meaningful way. And we're not going to until we really invest in youth programs, after-school programs, et cetera. So that number should go up, is what I would want to say, and what the lesson, I think, is for the county and for the state. We talked about this. We can move through this. And I raised the question, because we know even in personal relationships, you have conflict. People who are coming from the same background, there's conflict, personality differences, and way you were raised. Just imagine when you add culture and language to that mix. So there is a real potential for conflict, and we experience it. And that is that's part of our challenge as an agency and part of our challenge as a community. At the same time, what a sad world it would be if we were all the same. The question that I pose to us is, how do we harness the power of diversity, minimize the costs of prejudice and discrimination, fear and hatred? That is kind of the way I see our world. There is a tremendous potential to bring that diversity to bear and to really make our society the one that we want to be. I don't want to live in a homogeneous world. And so how do we take the diversity and make it work? So I just wanted to kind of give you the sense that at one time we actually had more than 70 staff before severe government cuts, occurred in the 70s and 80s. And then the origin is actually way back in the Zoot Suit riots. I mean, how many people remember the Zoot Suit riots? I don't expect that you would. Many years ago, right? It was a time. Well, you can actually see it if you watch the play on Broadway or saw the film. Not exactly the same as being there, but you will get a sense of the fact that there was a lot of violence in the streets of Los Angeles. And that created the Committee for Interracial Progress, that created the the Commission on Human Relations. The vision of the Commission, we want an informed, multicultural, and diverse community. We want to connect all of us by interaction, compassion, and understanding. And we're committed to justice, equity, opportunity, accountability, respect, and dignity for all. Okay, now, so, I was asked earlier when I met with the youth, of like, so, what do you do? So, you've got like all this stuff going on. How can you address this big problem with, 27 people? We have to clearly be strategic in our priorities. And what we focus on is public safety. We want to enhance public safety through the prevention of and planned response to hate crime and discrimination. And this is something that I've touched on, the Racialized Gang Violence Prevention Initiative. There's a lot of conflict that gangs are involved with that may not start as racial, but they sure do take on racial overtones, and they sure do have an impact on the larger community. And so sort of not wanting to, but realizing that a core part of the solution is to really look at what are the sparks, what are the triggers for violence in many communities? And gangs are a big part of it. Well, how do we deal with the issue of gangs? And as I said, it's not through law enforcement suppression alone. It cannot work alone. That's a critical part, but if it's not supported by the other things, you can forget about its efficacy. So that is a key initiative that we've had, and we've had tremendous success in communities where we've only spent a year simply bringing different groups together to focus on change. And unfortunately, we don't get a chance to do that enough, in the sense that we don't have the resources. But that's what communities need. They need to get past the let's arrest everyone to, okay, let's bring together all the programs we need to really address the root causes of gang violence. Our youth, I was mentioning that how critical schools are. We have the 0-Hour Schools Initiative. That's what we do to try to do our part. We have identified 5 different high schools around LA County, in Artesia, in Pomona, in Gardena, in the San Fernando Valley, and in Newhall. And in those places, we are creating models, human relations school models, that can be replicated by those districts to show that when you address these issues, when you have student leadership development, when you have teacher training, when you have parent involvement, when you have community collaboration, your campus doesn't have to fear having racial riots. And you'll actually see an improvement in a whole variety of measures, reduction in disciplinary actions, reduction in calls to the police, reduction in harassment, bias-related harassment incidents that are recorded on campus. So that's something that we have worked hard on for the past 2 years. We're entering our 3rd year, and we think that's a critical program to really affect the key institution of public schools. We do our hate crime report. You probably all might have caught some news. Whenever we do a hate crime report, it always gets big news. Of course, our efforts to show how there are different ethnic groups working together in different school communities rarely gets the kind of coverage that we get for our hate crime report. But we do an annual hate crime report, which does highlight the level of hate crime in our community, and I'll come to that real quickly in a moment. I mentioned 0 Hour, No Haters Here, our youth initiative, the Racialized Gang Violence Prevention Initiative, and we have a hate crime victim assistance and an advocacy initiative. And what that is that we actually fund 7 different community-based organizations who are from communities hardest hit by hate crime. And they are the ones to reach out to the community and to educate them about hate crime, to support the victims, and to support each other so that, as I said, when one community is victimized, they're not standing alone. They have partners from other communities standing together with them. And crisis response, of course, we're known for our major urban riots. We had the Zoot Suit, we had the Watts riots, we had the Rodney King riots in 1992, the civil unrest, the uprising, the rebellion, however you want to call it. That was the last one we had, but we're sort of known for that. So people know about us from abroad.